This key in my hand, it doesn't just open a door. It opens a conversation I've waited my whole life to have. You know that weight you carry in your pocket and don't even notice? This key was like that. Cold, made of common metal, but it felt like it weighed a ton. Every one of its teeth represented a fall, every scratch a scar. I was there, standing in front of the house where I grew up. The paint worn by the sun, the rocking chair on the porch creaking with the wind. Everything was the same, except me. I parked the car, took a deep breath and looked at my parents' old house. My father was on the porch with no idea that this was the day his world and mine were about to change forever. To understand the weight of this key, you need to go back in time with me. To the kitchen of my house when I was about 16 years old and I announced, "Dad, I'm going to be a rodeo cowboy." The house smelled of coffee and damp earth. My mother was at the stove, the radio softly playing an old folk song. My father, sitting at the table, was cleaning a tool with his thick, calloused hands from a lifetime of working in the fields. He wasn't a man of many words, but his silence spoke louder than any lecture. I gathered all the air my lungs could hold. He looked at me with the hardness of a man who works from sunup to sundown and said, "That's no future, son. It's an illusion. Go find a real job." Those words weren't shouted. They were spoken with a sharp calm, a certainty that only a worried father has. I wanted to argue, to talk about the passion, the adrenaline, but his gaze froze me. That look wasn't one of anger. It was fear. Years later, I understood. He wasn't afraid I would fail. He was afraid a one-ton bull would take me from him. His younger brother, my uncle I never knew, had died that way, in a roping accident on the farm. Rodeo for him wasn't a sport. It was a sentence. His words hurt. But that night, lying in my room, staring at the ceiling, I didn't feel anger. I felt a challenge. The ceiling of my room was a map of dreams, full of posters of champions, plastic buckles I'd won at small-town fairs. His voice echoed, "A real job." For him, the truth was in the land, in the sweat that guarantees the harvest. For me, the truth was in those 8 seconds of glory. And I made a silent promise, just to myself. One day, I wouldn't need words to answer him. My victory would speak for me. And so it began. I would sneak off to practice. I'd say I was going fishing, but I'd go to a friend's place who had some feisty calves. We improvised. We used old rope, mended gloves. I'd come home covered in scratches, saying I'd fallen down a ravine. I don't know if my mother believed me, but her look was one of silent complicity. I think she'd put antiseptic on my wounds, hoping it would heal not just the cuts, but my stubbornness too. I'd hitchhike to small-town rodeos. I'd take falls, earn a few bucks that barely paid for food. A small-town rodeo is a school. The arena is dusty. The prize is sometimes a sack of corn or 50 bucks. The air is a mix of barbecue, dust, and animal dung. I slept in tents, in the back seats of friends' cars. I ate what I could, but every time I stayed on a bull, no matter how skinny or small, I felt I was on the right path. Every aching bone, every night slept on the floor, was an installment paid on my promise. There was a day at a rodeo in some town I can't even remember that I fell off the bull in under 2 seconds. The announcer made a joke. The crowd laughed. I felt tiny. The bull's name was Dusty, and that's what I ate. As soon as the gate opened, I was on the ground. The announcer, to liven up the party, yelled into the microphone, "That one lasted shorter than a popsicle by the school gates." The laughter from the entire crowd sounded like thunder. I picked my hat up off the ground, dusted off the shame, and walked away with my head down, feeling every stare on my back. That night, sitting on the side of the road, waiting for a ride that wasn't coming, my father's voice echoed stronger than ever. It was the first time I thought, maybe he's right. When I was about to give up, an older cowboy, a local legend, saw me there. His name was Su Tiao, a man who didn't ride anymore, but who had more buckles at home than plates in his cupboard. He pulled his old pickup truck over next to me. He sat beside me and didn't give me a lecture. He just told me the story of his worst fall. He told me about a bull named Satan back in the 80s that broke 3 of his ribs and left him in bed for 6 months. My body was broken, kid, he said, his voice hoarse. But the worst pain was the silence of the arena, the silence of my wife, who would cry in secret, thinking I would never walk again. The doctor said it was the end of the line for me. He paused, looked at the horizon and continued, but the will to shut that doctor up was stronger than the pain. And at the end, he said, the arena doesn't knock us down forever, kid. It just tests if we have the courage to get back up. And that changed everything. He gave me more than advice. He gave me direction. With a new focus, I started to climb. I went from being the kid who falls to that kid who gives them a run for their money. I started training my body and especially my mind. I learned to study the bulls, to understand the rhythm of each one. I won one rodeo, then another. The money started coming in, and with it, respect. I was gaining respect, small prizes, until the invitation to the professional circuit arrived. After every win, I'd call home. And in every call, the same silence of approval that never came. I'd say, "Mom, I won again." She'd be happy, but she always ended the call with, "Be careful, son. Your father sends his love." The love came, but the words of pride did not. On the professional circuit, I met my shadow, a competitor who seemed born to beat me. His name was Jake, a blonde American with sponsors, a toothpaste commercial smile. He was technical cold, and he was the best. For a whole year, he was my nightmare. If I scored an 88, he'd score an 89. He was the favorite, the star, and the championship in Las Vegas came down to the 2 of us. The entire rodeo world was watching our duel, the finals, shoot number 3. My rival had scored high. Jake had made his ride, a 91-point score. The arena erupted. The pressure was all on me. The bull I had drawn was a legend. His name was King of the North, a nearly 2,000-pound monster that no one had managed to ride that season. The bull was a machine. The world disappeared. I couldn't hear the crowd or my rival. I could only hear my father's voice. The gates swung open. The first jump threw me against the sky. The second tried to rip me from the rope. The world spun in slow motion. I felt my muscles burn, my arm nearly dislocate, but I held on. 1 second, 2, 5, 7, 8 seconds. When the siren blared and I was still on, I knew I had done it. A 93-point score. World champion. The celebration, the photos, the interviews, it was all a blur. Everyone was congratulating me. Champagne, camera flashes, pats on the back. But none of it felt real. But in the midst of all that euphoria, I felt an emptiness. None of those voices mattered as much as the one I really wanted to hear. I looked at that giant check with an amount of money I never imagined I'd have. And I didn't see the money. I saw the floor plan of a house with a porch and a rocking chair. I took the prize check, and instead of celebrating, I went to my car. I had a trip to make. It was 2,000 kilometers of asphalt, dust, and thoughts. With every town sign I passed, I rehearsed the conversation. Sometimes, in the middle of the Arizona desert, I'd feel a childish fear. What if, even after all this, it's not enough? What if the house changes nothing? That was the longest, most silent journey of my life. And that's why I drove 2,000 kilometers without stopping. I got out of the car, walked up to the porch, and stood in front of him. I held out my hand with the key and said, "Dad, this is for you. You told me to find a real job, and with my job, I bought your retirement." He took the key. The silence lasted an eternity. He looked at the key, then at my hands, full of calluses and scars, so much like his own. And then he looked at me, his eyes welling up for the first time in his life. "Son," he said, "I never doubted you were brave. I was just afraid your courage would take you far away from me." In that moment, I understood the depth of a father's love. His hardness wasn't rejection, it was a shield. In that moment, we were no longer the stubborn father and son. We were just 2 men who loved each other. Today, I understand. His hardness was just the armor he wore to protect his heart. The house was never the goal. It was just my way of saying, "Dad, I'm okay, and I love you." You learn that life isn't about proving anything to others, but about understanding why we fight for things. My fight wasn't against my father. It was so that he could finally rest in peace, without fear for his son's future. The real victory wasn't the buckle or the money. It was the hug that ended years of silence. And of course, the barbecue we had the following Sunday.